Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here for ASM Publications. I'm getting a bit of an echo here. I apologize. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here for ASM Publications and Bills Digest. On today's show, we continue our preparation for the Bills season opener against the Baltimore Ravens. Plenty of injury updates on both sides were presented Wednesday afternoon, so we'll get to that. Also, Sean McDermott revealed the plan for Gabe Davis's return and a few intriguing comments made by Terrell Bernard and Josh Allen, both of whom spoke to the media this afternoon. Each week on Buffalo Pregame, I'll provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, podcasts, videos, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. All right, let's get into it. And there was some good news and some bad news from the practice field today, reported by the various men and women on the beat there in Orchard Park. And we'll start with the cornerback position, as Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford both banged up for the Bills, and they missed practice dating back to the Friday before the team's preseason finale against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and neither player returned to the practice field last week. Benford was working off to the side with athletic trainers, but Tre'Davious White has been out for a couple of weeks. Benford as well. Both players are dealing with what has been deemed to be groin injuries after it was first revealed by the team that they were lower leg injuries. Apparently, not really the leg at all, kind of above the leg area there in the groin for Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford. But everyone was waiting on the update for Tre'Davious White, as there was less concern, I think, encircling Christian Benford's status for this upcoming game against the Baltimore Ravens. But Tre'Davious White did not practice on Wednesday, continues to rehab that injury, and it appears to be a little bit more significant than Benford's. But at the same time, he was interacting with fans at various off-the-field events over this past weekend, and he's appeared in good spirits, including on last night's Hard Knocks finale. So while I don't think it's anything significant for Tre'Davious White, I think there's still some concern with his readiness to go this Sunday against the Ravens. But Sean McDermott did not rule him out for this Sunday's game, said we'll see regarding Tre'Davious White's status. So I bet this is going to run up all the way to Friday, maybe even all the way up to game day, and we'll see whether or not Tre'Davious White takes the field as one of the team's starters at cornerback against the Ravens. But I would imagine the Bills will need some sort of confirmation from Tre'Davious White as far as appearing on the practice field this week, showing the team that he's healthy enough to get out there, a player who's dealt with significant injuries in the past and trying to round himself back into form these past couple of years. I think they'll need some confirmation in that regard, but at the same time, he's a veteran player. I'm not sure how much confirmation they'll need. Maybe just his presence on the practice field, as we saw from Christian Benford this afternoon. But before we get to him, if Tre'Davious White is to miss this game, it seems likely that it would be Dorian Strong, the rookie at cornerback, or Jamarcus Ingram filling out as Douglas Masters. You're right on cue. Who starts at cornerback too if Trey White is out? And I would think it would be the rookie Dorian Strong, or like I said, Jamarcus Ingram first in line. And we heard Terrell Bernard really shower Dorian Strong with praise when he was asked about him after practice on Wednesday, really lauding his mindset and how intentional he's been at practice. And that's really allowed Strong to gain good grasp of the defense quickly in his career and put himself in position to perhaps earn a starting role against the Ravens if Tre'Davious White is out. I'd be a little concerned if that were the case, throwing a player in his first professional game into the fire against the team as talented as the Baltimore Ravens. But at the same time, we saw it with Christian Benford during his rookie year. We see how things have turned out with him one of the team's top players on defense. So, hey, perhaps that's a good route to go with Strong, and maybe he really hits the ground running and sets the stage for a contributing role as the season progresses. But like I said, I don't anticipate this is going to be anything long-term for Tre'Davious White, but still keep in mind this week he could be out against the Ravens. And I also would not count out Dane Jackson in terms of maybe filling in for Tre'Davious White. He's sitting there on the practice squad. The Bills do have those elevations that they can use on a player. I believe you get 3 per season. And with Dane Jackson waiting in the wings, familiar in the system, I think that was initially the thought of many in the media that they would plug and play with the veteran. But after he didn't make the 53-man roster, that becomes a bit cloudy. But hey, at the same time, as I said, you can use those practice squad elevations and maybe thrust Dane Jackson into a contributing role in week 1 against the Ravens. The Bills play their cards pretty close to the vest, so I doubt we'll see any clarity on that until, like I said, at the earliest Friday, but I would expect this to really extend all the way into game day, and we'll see who runs out there with the starting defense to begin that game. And you have to keep in mind that reporters are only able to watch a brief amount of practice, so I don't think that they're able to get really a good handle on who would potentially fill in for Tre'Davious White if he is to be out. And more on that fact later, that reporters are only able to watch a brief period. More on that in terms of another player's injury that we'll discuss coming up soon. But Christian Benford, another cornerback, had been out a while, as I mentioned, groin injury. It's been determined by the team's Wednesday injury report. He did practice on Wednesday. He was limited, and video from Matt Perino showed him moving around pretty well, but he did seem to be taking things a little bit slowly, trying not to aggravate that groin injury. I think the Bills would have to see less in terms of confirmation from Christian Benford than they would Tre'Davious White. Benford, an ascending player within their system. He's been around these past several years, so I don't know if you really need to see much from him on the practice field. I think him being out there, as I mentioned before, might be enough for Christian Benford. But at the same time, you would like to see him get back up to full participation by the end of the week. And I had a question here from TJ, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I do think it's a little bit questionable the way that the Bills have kind of announced these injuries, initially announcing them lower leg injuries and then deeming them groin injuries later in the week. Sean McDermott commented, I believe, on Christian Benford's injury is recently as today, calling it a lower leg injury. So maybe there was a little bit of miscommunication there between the Bills and the medical staff, or I don't know what was going on, but I think many people were imagining that it was an ankle injury or something to that effect for Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford for that matter. But after the injury report comes out, it's officially been deemed groin injuries for both of those players. So this is not the game that you want to be out 2 of your top cornerbacks. I don't know if Tre'Davious White would have won the job coming out of training camp had Max Hairston not been injured, but these are your 2 expected starters, and having them be limited in Benford's case and Tre'Davious White not participating, certainly not a great sign for the Bills, but hey, at the same time, Benford appears trending in the right direction, and if White's out short term, maybe they'll be able to plug and play the rookie and Dorian Strong or Jamarcus Ingram and get some short-term results. But beyond the cornerback position, the other potential starter for the Bills whose status is somewhat in question here is Tyler Bass. He practiced in a limited fashion on Wednesday. That was per the injury report. The Bills did work out 3 kickers last week: Eddie Pinheiro, Zane Gonzalez, and one other kicker, but they didn't sign any of them. So that points toward them being comfortable enough with Bass leading into this week 1 matchup. But I think this is something to monitor because he's had that pelvic area soreness. And then today on the injury report, left hip injury added to the list of injuries for Tyler Bass. So like I said, this is something to monitor at least throughout the course of the week and maybe the weeks following, but maybe the entire season. This is a kind of a tricky injury, I would say, for a kicker to be dealing with in the pelvic area, and now the non-kicking side hip, so the plant foot, maybe overcompensating for some pelvic area soreness leads to the hip injury. I'm no doctor, but my very limited athletic experience, I know what it's like to be playing with maybe a limp in one of your legs, and then you come home and all of a sudden your hip starts hurting. So not sure if that was the case, but like I said, something to keep an eye on with Tyler Bass. I think they'll run him out there week one. And hey, if he has any trouble, you have Ray Davis, kicker number 2, as the Bills released their depth chart the other day. So something to watch with Tyler Bass, but I think he'll be good to go for week one. So Benford, Bass, I think are good to go for week one. Tre'Davious White, I'm not so sure. We'll see if they go with Strong, Jamarcus Ingram, or perhaps Dane Jackson if White is to be out. But I'd like to pause for a moment, tell you to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Please go to the YouTube app, open it up, search Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky, like this video, and then like however many more videos you can like within about a 20-second period. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but it would really help me out in spreading the word. And also click that subscribe button and share it with your friends as well. Share this episode on your timeline. It's streaming live on X as well. But please go to YouTube. Comments are always welcome. We got Douglas Masters chiming in on X. We got T-Jab chiming in on YouTube. And Michael, we'll get to your question next. Keon Coleman. It took me a second to kind of notice that on the injury report. He was listed somewhere in the middle, and my focus was so honed in on Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford. But at second glance, sure enough, Keon Coleman listed with a groin injury and limited during Wednesday's practice. It's unclear if he sustained the injury during practice or in the days leading up to Wednesday's session. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is that reporters who did not report anything in terms of a Keon Coleman injury during practice, they aren't allowed to watch the entirety of the session. They're only able to watch the beginning before the team drills begin. So this is an injury that could have cropped up during team drills. We're going to have to watch whether or not he gets out there on Thursday, but not great news for Keon Coleman and the Bills wide receiver position overall. It's been banged up throughout the preseason and training camp, and no mention of the injury, like I said, for Keon Coleman from reporters, and it remains unclear how he sustained it. But it's an interesting injury to monitor due to the fact that you have Khalil Shakir, who did return to practice last week and upgraded his participation to full today. He's returning from a high ankle sprain, but he's been out for quite a while. You've had Curtis Samuel in and out of the lineup, a little bit more on him in a moment. You've also had Elijah Moore, who's dealt with some injuries. Joshua Palmer missed some time early in training camp, and as did Tyrell Shavers. So you've dealt with a number of different injuries at this position. You can't afford Keon Coleman to miss any time, especially leading in to this high-profile Week 1 matchup, just considering the fact that he has been the focus of this passing game throughout training camp in the preseason. It seems like the Bills have such big plans for Keon Coleman. It would really be a shame to see him go out with any type of injury. But as I said before, it's unclear kind of when he sustained it, how significant this injury is, but it is a groin injury for Keon Coleman. And last year, it seemed like every Bills player dealt with a wrist injury. This year, to start the season, everyone's dealing with groin injuries. So it's just a tough break for Keon Coleman, but hopefully we're holding out hope that it's nothing significant for the Bills' second-year wide receiver. Without him, this offense would suffer. I think you saw it at times last year. He was really coming on to start the year. Then he goes out, and the team struggled a little bit to replace him. Eventually, they found Mac Hollins kind of in that role. But Keon Coleman offers a lot more than a Mac Hollins would, and offers so much for this Bills offense that I think his absence on Sunday would really be a critical blow to the Bills, who are already banged up at other positions. He does so much for this team. He lines up inside. He lines up outside. He helps in the running game. It would just be such a big loss if Keon Coleman is to miss time with the groin injury that popped up on Wednesday's injury report. But I already mentioned Khalil Shakir trending toward a week one return as expected. And then Curtis Samuel, he returned to the practice field after a hamstring injury. then an illness kept him out. And he was also dealing with a personal matter, which was revealed by Sean McDermott in the pre-practice press conference. So a lot going on for Curtis Samuel. We hope for the best in terms of the personal matter. It seemed to be of positive nature based on what Sean McDermott said during his press conference. But Curtis Samuel was very effective for the Bills down the stretch of last season, particularly during the playoffs. And I think the Bills like what he has to offer. So I think he's set to appear on Sunday and set to play. He was not listed on the team's injury report. So doesn't seem to be any concern about Samuel's availability coming up for this weekend. And that's one thing with Curtis Samuel. He's been oft injured for the Bills seemingly, but he, I think, only missed one game last year. And has not missed many games in the past few years. There was a tweet that I saw weeks ago. I can't remember enough to credit it, but he has not missed much time. I think it was Joe Marino, actually, who said it, that Curtis Samuel just has not missed much game action during his recent career. So it's good to see Curtis Samuel out there, and that's another weapon that will be at Josh Allen's disposal this weekend if all goes well the remainder of the week. But just to review things on the Bills side, for the Bills to begin week one, their number one cornerback was limited. Their other starting cornerback did not practice. Their most impressive wide receiver this preseason was limited with a groin injury. The kicker was limited. And the team recently lost one of its rotational defensive tackles in Dwayne Carter, who remains on the roster. He was listed on the injury report today. They have yet to make that move and put him on injured reserve. So things have not gone swimmingly for the Bills to start things off in week one. But at the same time, there's some hope with some of these players. We'll see how the rest of the week progresses. And, it's first round pick. The Bills' first round pick, Max Hairston, will be out the first 4 weeks. And then Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt, two of the team's top offseason additions, both out the first 6 weeks due to suspension. So this week one matchup is looking increasingly daunting as the week progresses and some of these injuries continue to pop up. But if it weren't for the Bills' really soft schedule following the Ravens, I might have some extended concern over what's kind of taken place over the past weeks and months. But I think it's going to be a soft landing for the Bills no matter what happens in this week one game. I'll give my prediction a little bit later during the week, but no matter what happens in this game, it's going to be a soft landing for the Bills. After the Ravens, you have a matchup with the Jets, a matchup with the Dolphins, a matchup with the Saints, the Patriots, and then the Falcons before your bye week. And then after that, you have the Carolina Panthers. So that should be a stretch that the Bills can get fat, get healthy, and really forge ahead into the stretch run with, like I said earlier, all the weapons at Josh Allen's disposal and on the defensive side of the ball. So there is some hope here. It's not all doom and gloom, but I'll tell you what, this week one matchup against the Ravens is looking mighty difficult with all these injuries that the Bills are dealing with. On the Ravens side, there's a few injuries that they are also dealing with. Tight end Isaiah Likely dealing with a foot injury he sustained in late July. He underwent surgery to repair a foot fracture. It required a 6-week recovery. He's missed practice this whole time. He appeared on the practice field briefly today, talking with coaches, but quickly exited per the Baltimore Ravens reporters on the scene. He did not participate during the practice. After practice, John Harbaugh, head coach of the Ravens, said that Likely is maybe ahead of schedule and didn't really rule him out for Sunday, but I think it's just posturing on Harbaugh's part. I doubt he sees the field this Sunday. I could be proven wrong, but in any event, if the Ravens are to lose Likely this weekend, that would be a big loss for their passing game. He was the top receiver for the Ravens in that divisional round loss at the hands of the Bills, where the Ravens outgained the Bills by nearly 150 yards. Likely finished that game with 4 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Also recorded a reception for 26 yards during a Week 4 win for the Ravens over Buffalo early in the year. So if Likely's out, this is a tough loss for Baltimore, not one that they can't withstand. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins as a free agent this offseason. They got a couple of good young receivers, but at the same time, at the tight end position with Mark Andrews coming off a tough game against the Bills in that divisional round game. Is he on the downside of his career? They really need Isaiah maybe not need, but they would really like to have Isaiah Likely in the mix. And if he's not out there for the Ravens, that would be a big loss for them. So the Bills aren't the only team dealing with significant injuries, maybe not as many on the Ravens side, but the other one, the fullback, Patrick Ricard, dealing with a soft tissue injury of unknown nature. He's been out since mid-August. Harbaugh was asked about his status after the practice, but he declined to comment, really evaded the questions, joked at first, and then just flat out refused to answer. He's a big factor in the Ravens running game and what they do in play action. Eric Turner of Cover One providing a statistic that really is eye-popping when it comes to Patrick Ricard's impact. The Ravens have averaged 5.8 yards per rush on lead plays with Ricard in the lineup versus the Bills since 2023. He's really used as a battering ram, as Eric Turner pointed out on his X account. So that would be a big loss for the Ravens running game. And if you're to lose Likely in the passing game and Ricard in the running game, that could potentially slow down Baltimore's attack going into this game. I know a fullback isn't the most glamorous position, but when you have one of the most potent rushing attacks in the league, you have Derrick Henry, you like to have everything in front of him working at its full efficacy to allow him the best room to roam. So Isaiah Likely, Patrick Ricard, seeming doubtful to play on Sunday. We'll continue to follow it, but cornerback Jair Alexander did return to practice, so he may be able to return to the field for the Ravens in this game. Alexander was picked up off the free agent pile this offseason. If you remember, when Josh Allen was voted the biggest trash talker in the league, one of the clips was Allen and Alexander kind of chirping back and forth with one another. So a bit of history there between the Bills quarterback and the Ravens cornerback. So Ricard, likely an extra lineman in the backfield. That guy is massive for a fullback, says Douglas Masters. You're absolutely right. He certainly makes an impact for that Ravens running game. And TJab had a question as well. What do you think about finding a recently cut veteran for the cornerback position? How about the one from New England? The one from New England I think you're referring to is Jabril Peppers. That's a safety, so he wouldn't work in that situation. But I don't think the Bills are going to do that. I think they're going to roll out there what they have. They still have Maxwell Hairston hopefully coming back close to week 4. I don't think you'll see him until after the Bills bye week, but they do have him in tow and working on the mend. So that could be a nice midseason addition if he's able to come back and make an impact. So I don't think they're going to make any more commitments at the cornerback position. One free agent I would entertain them signing is a Jabril Peppers. And a question asked here by Douglas Masters again, the spot on the 53-man with Dwayne Carter, maybe that does go to Jabril Peppers. Maybe they're waiting to move Dwayne Carter to IR just because they're waiting to work something out with a free agent they have on the line. So we'll see how that transpires over the next several days and what they do with Dwayne Carter and what they choose to do in terms of an elevation from the practice squad, a free agent signing, whatever they choose to do to fill that spot left by Dwayne Carter. But once again, I'd like to remind you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Please go to the YouTube app, hit that like button on this episode. We've been gaining steam over there on YouTube. A few fewer viewers today than the last few episodes, but we appreciate any comments on YouTube as well. I think it's a little bit more comment friendly on the YouTube app. So do whatever you can to help us spread the word at Buffalo Pregame. Like, share, subscribe. We'll be bringing you the content fast and furious throughout the course of the season. But we'll wrap things up with some comments from Josh Allen and Terrell Bernard, both of whom spoke to the media on Wednesday. Bernard spoke about the difficulty in defending the Ravens' potent offense. And with two of the league's top 10 players per the NFL's top 100 in the backfield, Bernard says the Ravens can run offense in so many different styles. And one of the difficulties in defending against this team is the communication between the Bills' defensive players and whether or not they're able to get on the same page and understand what style of offense the Ravens are going to throw at them on a given day. So that'll be key, something to watch. And you can only do so much against one of the top running backs in the league, a dual threat quarterback that's won a couple of MVPs. And it makes it very difficult to play against this Ravens offense and all the other pieces that they have on the outside. So at the same time, if you're able to get on the same wavelength with one another and understand what's coming at you, I'm sure that makes things much, much more easy to digest for Bernard. And another player that Bernard spoke about, Matt Milano, at that second level of the Bills defense. And what Bernard said about Milano was just the impact that he makes within the Bills defense. Called him, I believe, one of the defense's most important players. And you saw it during that divisional round win over the Ravens this past January, the impact that Milano made. And Bernard said it perfectly. Milano can do so many things. He can blitz. He can cover. He can come up and play and run support. He called him a dynamic playmaker, and that's exactly what you saw from Milano in these two teams' last matchup this past January. He's so key for this team, is Matt Milano. I mentioned it in a previous podcast. He can spy the quarterback, can also come up and be physical with Derrick Henry. Really excited to see Matt Milano on Sunday. But as far as Bernard's comments, just wrapping it up, he said that they really got embarrassed by the Ravens this past season in that first matchup in week 4. And he felt, although Bernard, Taron Johnson, Milano, and eventually Taylor Rapp were missing in that game, he felt that the team learned a lot from that performance or lack thereof. And really, you could see the fruits of their labor throughout the course of the season and the film work and learning from their mistakes in that game show well during that divisional round matchup. And he seems confident going into this game. There's still some injury trouble to be worked out, but a lot of good stuff from Terrell Bernard at the microphone. Josh Allen didn't have as much to say in terms of really meaningful comments, but he did once again comment on the connection between he and tight end Dalton Kincaid. He reiterated the fact that he needs to be better for Dalton Kincaid, that uncatchable ball rate that was sky high last year, the highest of any tight end in the league. Josh Allen wants to get Dalton Kincaid more involved, wants to do it more down the field, not just that catch and run style near the line of scrimmage. So as I've been saying all offseason, you're going to see a more dynamic skill set from Dalton Kincaid. At least they're going to try to force that early in the season. And he's been kind of under the radar throughout training camp and the preseason, producing, catching balls in the red zone. So excited to see Kincaid and how his development continues in year 3. And before we get out of here, let's just talk about Gabe Davis quickly. The plan for him, as it's been revealed, that he has been officially signed to the practice squad, but he's going to be moved to the practice squad injured list, which I didn't even know existed. Leave it to the Bills to pull out all the stops. They're very crafty in everything they do with personnel moves. So they signed Gabe Davis to the practice squad. They're going to quickly release Jordan Poyer, and then you're going to see him re-sign to the practice squad while you see Gabe Davis moved to that practice squad injured list. And Sean McDermott laid out kind of the plan for Davis moving forward with the Bills, and he said that he's going to continue to rehab that meniscus injury that he sustained during his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. But the plan is to get Gabe Davis on the field or at least see what he has to offer on the field on game days. So I don't know whose position he's coming for. I don't know how they're going to fit him in. I don't know if they're going to add just a 7th receiver when he comes back, or whether or not, like I said, he replaces Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, or perhaps a Tyrell Shavers. But the plan is for Gabe Davis to be a contributor on this team. How much? I guess we'll see. I think it really comes down to maybe his willingness to perform on special teams, because that's something that would likely be needed if he's going to fill a 7th spot or take over for Tyrell Shavers. But a lot of times these things work themselves out. Maybe another player gets injured. They fit in Gabe Davis at the perfect time. So something to look at with Gabe Davis, but he's officially signed to the practice squad. You'll see a little bit of movement with Jordan Poyer before he takes his rightful place back on the practice squad. And then Gabe Davis shuffled off to the practice squad injured list. But I think that covers it all from today. We did it quickly in about 30 minutes, which I'm very grateful for to get out of here and and work on some other stuff that I have going on. But I think the takeaway from today is let's wait and see with these injuries. Trey White, don't think it's going to be long-term, but he might miss week 1. And then Keon Coleman is the other one to watch. The groin injury that he may have sustained during Wednesday's practice listed on the Wednesday injury report as being limited. So Trey White, Keon Coleman, those are the 2 players I'll be watching on Thursday as far as the reports coming out of Bills practice. But that's going to do it. Be sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe as well. I'll be back a couple more times this week to preview the season opener and then look forward to my game day coverage on Sunday, both on Buffalo Pregame and now on Bills on SI, which I've been posting articles on my X account the past few days. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.